I've only been executive director of ACT for about 8 months. So, and if Carrie Perloff, who's our artistic director, had been in the Bay Area, she would be here, not I. And she would be in a much better position to tell you the history of our bringing Battlefield. But Carrie's in London and doesn't come back till tomorrow, and so they sent me. Anyhow, we're delighted to be here to talk with all of you. We hope you'll all come and see Battlefield. ACT has a long relationship with Peter Brook, and the opportunity to both have him here and to have this great work of art in our theaters has meant a great deal to us. And I just hope you'll all come and hear it.
Thank you. Thank you for
See it.
Before I invite Peter to come chat with us, I would like to invite Marie-Hélène Estienne to come and say a few words. Okay, two of you together. This is the story of their life. There's two of them together doing incredible theater.
Vas-y. Oui, je viens avec moi. You don't want to be alone? Okay.
Stand in the middle.
Yes.
Sit. No?
We'll put Peter in the middle.
Yeah, we put Peter in the middle, which is good.
Standing or sitting?
Sitting, no? Sitting
Whichever
for
you
Peter,
prefer.
for you.
A bit to start.
No, you start.
Okay.
As you
Yeah.
like.
I've got
You
this.
have
Do
the
I need
mic.
this?
And Marie-Hélène has this.
But that's I think
It's
it
not
doesn't
for
I
it's
think
not for volume.
You can
It's
hear, no?
yes. Marie-Hélène, c'est pas pour volume, c'est pour.
Ah, c'est pour la vidéo.
Oui.
So, what should I say? You have to ask me something.
Well, yes, I would like to know from you what's it like to be Peter Brook's right arm?
C'est comme ça.
Oui.
It is like that. There is no answer to that. It's a long relation, 40 years or more, and every day is better.
40, not 14.
40.
4 decades.
42, 43, 44. I don't know.
So both you and Peter have this incredible ability for long-term relationships. Peter, tell us, what is the secret of that? Long-term relationships with Jean-Claude, with Marie-Hélène, with all your other collaborators. You have a mic.
We only make sense in the present. All the rest, people write books about, and one answers questions. It's of no interest. What matters is what is alive now, and when we have something new to do, it's alive at that moment, and we don't say, well, how did we do it 40 years ago? I hope.
Well, perhaps it could be interesting, who knows, but we need a long time
Yes,
for that.
Yeah.
but not now.
Not now. Tell us what inspired you to create Battlefield?
Assieds-toi, je crois, parce que c'est très
Ouais.
fatigant.
I must at once clarify certain words that can only lead to misunderstanding. In the universe, there has only been one creator. To say to someone, to create Battlefield, it's not Marie-Hélène, it's not me. We are here as the mouthpieces, something that at a certain moment in life seems to need to be heard. But the creation comes from questions nobody can answer. Who created Mahabharata? Nobody can answer that. I've just been asked, who created Shakespeare? Nobody can answer that. We know that these are works which came out of the deep experience of the human being, which comes from millions of human beings and is canalized through one single human being. in India, it is the storyteller at the moment he's telling the story. And that's how several thousands of years the Mahabharata gradually grew. But the true author, we will never know, except that it was the whole of the Indian life, culture, question of that moment that found, at this moment, something true can come through that mouth. Then it goes to another mouth. So certainly, we are here, because it touched us very deeply, to bring, at this moment in our history, something that we felt we could share, because there was a conviction that what was so alive in the Mahabharata can be felt and relived today in different terms. It's not, the staging is different, one doesn't use the same manners, the same techniques, you don't use the same lights, the same costume, any of that, but what comes is not our creation. It's yours.
Beautiful.
It's ours.
Well, you are certainly the medium of that. What would you just say to somebody who's deciding whether or not to go see Battlefield?
What would you say?
I would say if you want to listen to something deep somewhere, sometimes deep, sometimes funny, but not big entertainment, come and see Battlefield. And there is a spirit, I hope, of those people who wrote that beautiful piece such a long time ago, to share all that. It's a sharing. If you want to share, come. If you want to be entertained, I'm not sure. Say Gordon Craig did this. I'm not sure it's the right place.
Yes.
We must be careful with that. We are here to modest. It's a modest approach of something that we found deeply in our heart, and the actors and the musician carry that. You saw it. You can speak about that. You saw it.
So there are many people in this room whose lives have been transformed by Peter Brook.
Oh,
Yes.
Who have changed direction completely for the good, I might add, because of something that Peter Brook said or did or wrote. And I happen to be one of them. I'm meeting Peter for the first time, but I lived in Paris for 13 years, and I met Jean-Claude Carrière there. And I was a computer scientist working in technology consulting. And I gave up my job and I started a theater company. Because Jean-Claude and I had a conversation, and I said, really the Mahabharata was a watershed moment, not just in theater history, but history of mankind, because it was the first time that a South Asian Indian story had been told with such finesse, and everybody could understand it, despite all the criticism that my fellow countrymen might have made.
But it's
It really was,
It's
yes.
the Mahabharata itself.
It is the
I mean,
story
the
itself.
book
But
is-
you see, there are storytellers for each age, as Peter said. And Jean-Claude and Peter were the storyteller for our age that allowed
Yes.
and stories from Greek mythology have been accessible to us in South Asia, but the Mahabharata was not accessible to the West until you opened that door.
and that was for them.
Yes.
Battlefield is another age.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. So you like to do these things. There are people in this room, including myself, who are deeply associated with Conference of the Birds.
Ah,
I directed it 6 months ago. Patty sitting here played the hoopoe in Washington.
And played the hoopoe.
We have two hoopoes in the room. Oh my goodness.
No, you were storyteller hoopoe.
yes.
No, he did it. I saw him on a film.
And you said never act again.
Which was a good thing, because you're a phenomenal director. So what is it that makes you seek out stories from other cultures and make them universal?
Can I answer just
Yes,
one?
of course.
Please
Just
do.
because they are universal. They are universal. We should never discuss about it doesn't belong to a culture. I don't think that Shakespeare belongs to England,
No.
or it would be really terrible. Or Molière to France, or so. And it's not as big as Molière is not as big as that, but really universal. Universal is for us. If we have the luck to get into it, it's a luck actually.
I completely
gift.
agree.
Sorry.
No, on the contrary.
No, please.
I can't add to that. I can bring something different, and that is, I always felt that this very great work, I encountered it just by chance. We were doing a play about the Vietnamese War, so that one can see here in this place concerns everybody. And with our work in the Royal Shakespeare Theatre, I was working with a little group of writers and artists and musicians, and we all felt we can't sit back here in London criticizing the Americans, saying, look what an awful, brutal, tragic mess you're making of your part of the world. America is part of us. And so we said, our starting point, we have to do something, and it's urgent, but we'll take just 3 months, 4 months, fix a date, and we have to bring out something on the Vietnamese War called US, meaning US, us. When we were doing this, every day at lunch like this, people would come in and shared with us different experiences, many from Vietnam, their experiences of the war, soldiers. And one young Indian came up to me and pushed a piece of paper into my hand, little thing, and he said, please read it, it's my play. I said, yes. He said, look at it. It's about a tiny moment from the Bhagavad Gita. It's about the moment when, just before giving the signal to start this horrifying war of extermination, Arjuna comes down from his chariot, driven by Krishna, and says, why should we fight? Because he sees in front of him, ready to destroy one another, his cousins, his uncles, he sees his family. Why should we fight? When I heard that, I thought, if only General Westmoreland, who you remember was the great general of the time, if he could just get off his chariot and stop and say, why should we fight? That could change the world. So I thought, I must know what this is. And I started asking, but what is this? I was told, well, it's just a tiny moment from what calls the Bhagavad Gita, which in turn is part of the Mahabharata, a name I'd never heard. And then with Jean-Claude Carrière, and then with Marie-Hélène, we started exploring until we met a marvelous Sanskrit scholar in Paris, Philippe Lavestine, and night after night we went and sat on the floor in front of him, and he was the storyteller, and he gradually told us over weeks and weeks during the night the story of the Mahabharata. When we'd received this, Jean-Claude and I looked at one another in the street in the night and said, we can't just keep this experience for ourselves. And then to come back to the essential question, I felt very mysteriously, because it's always a mystery, this great work which belonged to India for thousands of years was, apart from scholars and universities, was unknown in the rest of the world. And I felt that it was standing up and saying, I need to come out into the world. And we were there, we hope, doing our best to serve its need. And that's how the first Mahabharata came into existence. Today, we're not trying to do a new version, a rehash or anything, but together we felt, when, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, we felt that in the same way, the work itself, certain themes in it, are beginning to rise up and say, these are something that can touch people in the way that US was us. This is about us today. And for that, we don't need spectacle. We don't need elaborate dances, elaborate costumes, which were part of our serving the best possible the epic in the first time. No, this is with a little group to try to make alive at the moment of performance certain questions and certain themes which, if one comes open to it in that way, can really concern us today. Was that your experience when you saw it?
Oh, absolutely. I had the pleasure of sitting with Marie-Hélène and Jean-Claude on either side of me and watching it, not once or twice, but 3 times, and in rehearsal. And as theatre usually is, every night and every performance was different, but and every day I got different messages out of it, and every day I got to watch different actors explore the depth of the meaning of what was being shown. And I felt as an Indian who very arrogantly had believed that I know a lot about the Mahabharata, wrongly so, that I learned a lot, and it was a lesson in humility, because there is a lot in the Mahabharata that we as Indians, by osmosis, do not absorb, and we need people like you to explain it to us. So thank you for that. I think everybody should go see the battlefield.
So now we are here as Googles, and it's for you to press the buttons, and then
Not too long.
Well, I'm going to start with the first question.
I want to ask about the first question.
there.
I'm a chef.
What?
I'm a chef.
Ah.
I'm a chef owner.
This over there.
So
A chef.
Un chef. Qui cuisine.
So the
cook.
oldest human behavior in the celebration is to eat together and share. And in your beginning, you said it's about the present. It's about present, which really matters. So how can we actually explain it a little bit more so that we can really understand? Because that's the most important thing. But as soon as you said that, it did ring a bell to me, which is very, very close to my heart. And that's what I want to do all the time, but I cannot do it all the time. So I would love to hear from you.
But we talk the same language because amongst the questions, I'm afraid to ask useless and unanswerable questions. And one that is often asked is, what do you think will be the future of the theatre? And my arms drop, and I've only found one answer. I said, well, that's like asking in 50 years, what is the future of food? And that brings us right back to what you have just said. The proof of the pudding is in the eating. And that's the only truth we know in food. And that's where there is an endless rising and falling scale for every single aspect of human behavior, which is that it can get better or it can get worse. And that's the same with, and that's what makes you, and we try to let it make us try at each moment by trial, essential, trying things, and we have to expect, that's where the modesty you speak of is so essential, error, by trial and error, tasting. You can taste, we can taste in what's called rehearsal, but the real tasting is when there are sharing what we have attempted to bring into the open with other people. And that is that tasting, food tasting, wine tasting, performance with story tasting.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Who wants to ask the next question?
The rest is silence.
I'm going to ask the next question. There weren't a
What's going on there?
And a party.
Oh, it's another party.
yes,
No, there are many parties.
many parties,
Ah.
yes.
And the cooking, and the cook also. Very
And
well,
many
actually.
cooks.
I
in
saw
any
beautiful
place.
meat.
Yes.
Ah,
You were one of the few people in your center to break the idea of a character must be represented on stage by the ethnicity inherent in that character. Clearly, you're passionate about that. Would you like to say something that would inspire all the arts creators in this room to take something away that's good and they can learn from you on that aspect?
you know, to me, from very young, the things that, for some reason, have been absolutely obvious, I could never understand. I never had to read books or be lectured about racism. I could never understand how this could be possible, how one person could look at someone else and say, "Ooh, it's
Terrible color.
not a bit. On the contrary, two different colors, they can come together." And it never occurred to me this
Give me
was
two of this.
possible. And it's, in a way, it was very simple. How is it possible? When I was a child, I didn't know if the toys still exist today. Do children, any of you who have kids at the moment, have jigsaw puzzles?
Yes.
Do they still exist?
It's like food, it hasn't gone away.
It hasn't gone away, because that, to me, was so simple. Humanity, each bit of humanity, this thing with that awful name, a culture, which is just people make fortunes out of defending culture, but each culture, each religion, each belief, each stock of literature, all these are just little fragments of something that nobody whatsoever can completely encompass, which is the human experience. So here, there is a little experience that white people who have done some good across the world and a lot of unspeakable harm come together with black people. We've traveled a lot, worked a lot in Africa, simply because when I started working in the theatre, I felt that the best actors in the highest level of the London West End Theatre, there was an actor I could find in Africa who had no training whatsoever, but could, just like that, become a character. And these are two fragments of this enormous jigsaw. So the moment one sees that we are trying to put together little pieces, then it just seems that common sense says it's ridiculous to say, my piece is better than your piece. Let's try to put them together.
It's beautiful. You will see that in Battlefield as well. And we certainly saw it in the Mahabharata and in everything else that Peter has done. So another excellent reason to go see the Battlefield. I want to ask you a very small, almost banal question.
Oh, that's a good one.
When you were doing Conference of the Birds and trekking across Africa with this book in your pocket, I understand, Helen Mirren was with you. Did you see then the potential of who she was going to become?
She was already very known.
She was.
Yes.
That's
Ellen started when she was, I think, 16 or 17 at the RSA. She doing what? I don't remember the part, but as soon as she was on stage, she was recognized. Of course, she was not the star of movies, but she was a young star of the theater. No? And better than that. No, tu n'as pas besoin de
No. What was so interesting was, as Marie-Hélène is saying, she was already a promising young actress in a country where there were many other promising young actors and many, many possibilities. And amongst them, she was one of the small ones who felt that she needed to come with us to a broader, different sort of work, where the one thing that people knew is that we were an international center in which she would be working with people from different parts of the world. And she felt this need. So there was somebody who clearly was very talented, but she was a very, very living, active vital member of our little group in the works that we were doing.
I can tell a little anecdote. I was in New York.
Use the mic, please.
I was in New York, downtown, somewhere, and I see in the street a woman who looks really like Helen Mirren. So she comes next to me, near me, and it is Helen Mirren. So I says, Helen, and it was like that. I see that she doesn't want to have autograph or
Selfie.
yeah, no autograph. I think. And I said, no, it's Trump. And I said, Helen, it's Marie-Hélène. She says, Marie-Hélène, and she comes to me. She speaks French very well, but I just got to the point. She said, when you see Peter, tell him that it was the most important moment of my life.
Keep it. You must hear this all the time, that you are the most important thing that happened in somebody's life.
No, but it was a period that was important, not only Peter. I mean, what they did
Yes,
together.
yes. Well, collectively you have been
No, that's,
people in the room.
no, but that is.
Choice also. Choice.
No, if I was lucky enough to be able at a certain moment to bring people together, your word you've just used, we must collectively, something was useful to that person at that moment. What more can one want?
Elle veut dire quelque chose.
I'd love to tell a short story.
Would you care to come up and speak in the mic so we can capture you
I
on
can
video?
speak loudly.
No, we need you on video.
Oh, we're all right.
Thank you for sharing that you can speak loud.
I'm her husband. She can speak loud.
Thank you.
You see,
Yes?
this all has to immediately be transmitted to the CIA.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'll tell all my secrets.
Yes,
It was
they know most of them already.
over 50 years ago. It was New Year's Eve. I was in New York City. I was 23 years old. The year was 1965. I was alone on New Year's Eve, and I had gotten a ticket to the hottest play in town that was going to open. It was in previews, and the title was The Persecution and Assassination of Jean-Paul Marat, as performed by the inmates at the Asylum of Charenton, under the direction of the Marquis de Sade.
Bravo. I couldn't have said that.
Yeah, well, see, you know it made an impression. So I was alone, and my seat was third row center in the orchestra. Wow. I was right in front of the stage. And let's see what this play is going to be about. Well, the play happened, and Peasley's music happened, and the actors spoke to each other, and the inmates spoke to each other, and touched my heart. When the intermission came, people came in and out, but I was still sitting there. And the play ended, and near the end of the play, the character Coquerel comes and he points right directly at me and looks in my face and says, "When will you learn to take sides?" And it pierced my soul, because he was talking to me, a young girl. I have to take sides, and I needed to find out what that meant. And the music went on, and the play finally ended, and the inmates dispersed, and the audience dispersed, and I was still sitting there. And I found that my body was shaking a bit, and I was full of emotion. Later, in trying to identify what was going on, the word catharsis came to mind, something you learn in theater history. So what does that mean? It was some way in which the performance, the play, had reached into my whole heart, soul, and it spoke to me on a bunch of levels. When will you learn to take sides meant I had to do something with my beliefs. At this time in the 60s, there was segregation was happening in the South where I lived, so I went off and I started a little mixed race theater company, and we went and did a play called In White America. And so I was trying to live some of my values. And in addition to that, it made me decide that the theater had, if it had the power to change me in such a way, it could possibly do good things in the world. I'm not. I don't know whether all productions are even could seek to try to change a life, but there's a power in the art. And what has thrilled me to watch the career of this gentleman here is to watch how he has let the spirit of improvisation work through him, and he has explored themes that were important, as in the US play, something that had a message. He's explored ways of performing, how music and art interact, and he has brought the world together. He's brought us all together in this moment right now.
That's right, man.
And so I feel delighted and honored to be sitting next to this gentleman. I'm 74, and so I've been kind of watching him and following him around for a long time, and now I get to
Beautiful.
to hold his hand for just a moment. Thank you very much.
Thank you for
No,
sharing
that's-
that. I want to share
You can
something.
see how one can never tell, one can only do one's best. None of us in preparing that play would have picked on one line. There are many lines that could have touched different people
Yes.
in different ways, and that's what it's all about. And this happened to be just at that moment right for you.
Yes.
I can tell you, though, to balance that, somebody else who had a very different experience, and how lucky you were that night. That in that theatre, the most expensive seats and the best seats were in the front row. And so you weren't in the front row. But there was a great Hollywood producer who had heard about this play and was convinced that this could be something that he would be interested in filming. And he came and he got, of course, his assistants got him the best seat in town, which was in the middle of the front row. So he sat there and the play began to go, and by the middle of it, he was thinking, yes, I think I could do something with that. But at that moment, there was a chorus of all the inmates of the asylum, each one of them an actor playing, after careful observation of different mental conditions, what were considered the inmates of this asylum. And so all of them couldn't help the fact that they were dribbling a bit. And as they came forward singing one of the choruses that Richard Peasley had written, a glob of spit came from the stage right into the producer's eye. So he got up, walked out, and had never heard from him.
From the sublime to the ridiculous. Theatre has it all. I do want to take a moment to mention Montalvo Arts, because they are bringing Malika Sarabhai here in September. We are going to be totally spoiled as far as choice of fare. She had a very, I think, incredible connection with the Mahabharata, because she was the only Indian in the play. Did she give you a rough time?
No, she was marvelous, and for that very reason brought something at that time no one else could have brought with such quality. Oh, I'm delighted she's coming here.
September. She's coming in September, yes. She told me she gave you a bit of a hard time.
That's, of course. Let's hope.
Peter.
Let's hope it. Let's hope. No, I mean, there's no reason when you're touching something like that. It's really like climbing Everest. Why should it be easy going all the time?
Tell us a little bit about how you and Jean-Claude and Marie-Hélène work together, because
Come back. Thank you.
thank you so much for sharing. There are many directors, theatre directors in the room and producers in the room, and we'd all love to build long-lasting relationships in the development of theatre. And I mean, there is no better example of long-lasting relationships than you and Marie-Hélène, you and Jean-Claude, you with other collaborators, Jean-Claude with other collaborators. These relationships last 4 or 5 decades. How do you do it?
Now you see, there are two sorts of questions. A question that isn't deep to your heart, in which case one can say it, but it isn't really worth much. But if you have a deeply felt, strong question, and you put it into words, as you've done, anyone who feels that, how can I collaborate? How can I collaborate better? What does that... If anyone gives you an answer, you mustn't listen to it, they're a liar. It's like in everything. There is only one answer, which is living with that until it gets more and more and more uncomfortable, until it nags you. And so you look at your collaborator and you think, my God, I'm not really listening. And that quietens you, listen for 10 seconds a bit better. Mm-hmm. That's all. And then you see, oh, there, I'm going again. Oh, watch out. And it's just in letting the question you say, how can we collaborate better? Not by asking other people, how do you do it? On the contrary, just living with the fact that that becomes a necessity.
Beautiful. Thank you. That, I think we were all looking for that answer. Okay, more questions.
Just a quick, when you sort of look over the course of your career, obviously there have been moments in history where the political environment has a lot of people say some of the greatest art is created during these periods of turmoil in society. So as you sort of continue to sort of look and be inspired by things, how do the world's politics inform the way that you feel you have to tell particular stories at a particular time?
I think that each day when you get up, you can feel two things. One, the wonderful thing of just looking out of the window and seeing the sky and seeing a new dawn and seeing the sunlight coming, and that renews you the feeling that this is a day, and a day is an eternity. This is something, and we're here, still alive for this day. Then the other question is not to think that because you have some deep question, you're isolated, you're on a mystical trip of your own. That is meaningless. Even if we take something and we're fed by it, by the sunlight or by the sky or by the food, we are part of the life going on, and our only function is not something we can force, but just quite naturally live the moment we're living in. And so for that, I mean, Marie-Hélène was listening in the car on her phone for the results of the French elections, which for those living in France, I mean, it's important for the whole world, but as your elections were here, but this has an immediacy that it would be absurd for us to say, oh, doesn't matter. No, all of this. And so, in that way, one is part of today. And so in that way, whether we're so-called artists, creators, whether we're directors, actors, playwrights, painters, journalists, we're all journalists in the sense that any good journalist and any good editor, if he's closed to that endless movement of life around him, is no good at his job. So we're in that same position. So all we have to develop for ourselves is this possibility of absorbing the world we're living in.
Kathy.
Your original work was at a time where we saw many groups of multinational actors coming together and trying to figure out how they could make common projects. How do you feel the sort of post-colonial critiques and the contemporary world order, when many of the borders that you crossed as you traveled around North Africa or things like that, the kind of travel to Iran or other things was much easier, and it felt it was a time of coming together. How would you contrast that with what is going on right now, and you think those close down of I own this story and you can't do it, you are a colonialist? How do you think those play out in contemporary theater and its projects?
No, but all those words are old-fashioned. What is now is on the move. It's changing. So that when we were in Iran and we were in North Africa at that time, it's very different. So that the same place, you go to Iran today, if you can get in and if you can get out again, it's very different. But some of the factors when we were in Iran there, the struggle that we had to get away from the Shah's secret police is now replaced by another set of secret police. Some things are the same, some hide behind other disguises, and some clashes are replaced by other clashes. And that's part of the whole endlessly changing world picture. It's like the weather.
So, Peter Brook, I wanted to ask you, yesterday I saw a marvelous Indian dance performance of Odissi dance. And the dancer was brilliantly articulate, and he explained how the dance was in devotion to Lord Jagannath, because Odissi dance is Eastern India. And he was saying that he gets to a point where he's completely immersed and transcendent in his dance, and it's kind of form of worship and transcendence. So what do you feel an actor on the stage, what is their goal, and what is their purpose and higher functionality, whatever?
None of us are perfect. To have experiences like the one you've just spoken, to see something coming through another set of forms in another way can touch one deeply, gives one a moment of thinking, yes, there's a wonderful line in Shakespeare which covers everything. There is a world elsewhere. And what you're saying is, of course, we recognize there's that. Then we come back to what we are working with now, and we just see that perhaps we can be more sensitive, more attentive, and because there is something hidden inside everything. There isn't anything that we know completely. And just saying, we're going to go, an actor who goes on the stage and says, I know how to say to be or not to be, I know what it means, is a criminal idiot. A true actor says, I don't know what the word be means, I don't know what not to be could mean, and I've no idea what really is the question. Then you can begin to work. So that one again must put aside but to be an actor or a dancer, you have to see that you've only one instrument, which is your body, your voice, your eyes and your ears. And so you have to keep in training. It's simple. It's like with the Olympics. You do these incredibly difficult things. You have to. So that's why today actors exercise alone, exercise with others, so that the group becomes not a solo, but like in music, in a quartet, a quintet, a living, shared organism. That training is endless. And at the same time, all that training, if it's just to serve an ambitious ego, this is what we see in every election. If it's only to serve that need to make a tremendous impression and to get applause, it's very touching to feel that the language of applause brings us together. But if I were to sit here thinking, I must get another round of applause, it would be criminal or just stupid. So that there one sees that the whole art of any performer in any form is to develop the instrument and then try to listen alone and with the others to that secret that comes through the heart.
Beautiful, thank you so much.
Okay, last question.
A follow-up on what you had said earlier, Peter. In the world that we live in the United States today, there is much anxiety among all peoples, especially people who look different from what was the majority here. Are you aware or do you know of works that are being done to actually address this feeling that is there in our community today? Because I speak as a South Asian that lives here. The sense of being discriminated in a country just based on the way I look is frightening. And I'm curious to know, are there artists use the times to shape their work to address, the moments that you were talking about earlier? So I'm curious, are you aware of any prominent works that are addressing this moment in time?
Always in
Well, certainly the battlefield addresses it.
I think that in relation to what you say, there is available still the possibility of making protest in the streets. Yesterday in Washington, I think there was an enormous mass movement of protest. But it is very easy to diminish the real living possibility of the theater by just using a play as a way of expressing one's anger, frustration, disappointment. There are plays that do that, but if they stop there, they're losing the sense of what can be brought in a performance, and what can be brought if a performance showing the worst of the clashes that we live in can't go beyond it and give one just a tiny taste of hope, so that we go out feeling just a little more courageous to face what you speak of, a little more hopeful that yes, it's possible. Here, many years ago, we worked with the Campesino Theatre, and there we heard continually them using this phrase, whatever the conditions are, si puede. Yes, it's possible. And that's what I think one must always come back to.
I do want to invite Elizabeth to say a few words on behalf of ACT, please.
It's good.
And then we'll do our round. Thank you. Yeah.
So, thank you so much.
I don't need a mic.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just would like to say on behalf of ACT, thank you so much for having us here. One of the many reasons that we are deeply honored to present Battlefield, which you heard so eloquently today, is that we take very seriously our responsibility at ACT to celebrate and represent the richness of cultures that are in the Bay Area. And we are just so excited to be partnering with ENACT and with the South Asian community. And so we have some celebrations in the works. On May 7th, we will have a community day where we'll be co-hosting with ENACT South Asian Culture Day with live music and South Asian food and crafts from South Asian culture that artisans that will be available, and music, live music. Yes.
I was going to ask if he could, because we have some of the Bay Area's best musicians coming to play.
Great.
and it would be an honor for them to. Oh my goodness.
And Peter and Maria Len will be speaking in conversation on the stage of the Geary Theater again on May 1st. Sorry, I went out of chronological order, sorry. May 1st, and then May 2nd, I believe it'll be Maria Len in conversation with a prologue at 5:30 before that evening's performance. And there are postcards on your tables that give you information about how to connect with us. There's a discount code that is the word Brook, B-R-O-O-K, that will get you.
There will be post-show talk with the actor.
There will be also audience exchanges after 3 of the performances that are a subscription series that you can come. There's a Tuesday night, a Sunday afternoon, and a Wednesday afternoon, so you can be in conversation with the actors. So there are many ways to come and connect with this incredible piece of work and the artists who made it.
I just want to add that many of you represent organizations that are either arts organizations or support art organizations, and I would request you to spread the word. If they can make the effort of bringing the play here, we can certainly make the effort of bringing an appreciative audience. So everybody please work very hard to fill all of the seats. It will be worth it. I'm the only person other than Peter and Maria Len who's actually seen the play. And you can take it from me that it's going to be worth it.
No. Come with no expectations.
Okay.
Just your heart.
That's it.
That's okay. But come.
Good. Good.
This is the most amazing event. Peter Brook is, at 92 years old, so fresh, so young, so relevant. Everything he says, everything he does still touches the heart of those of us who live in the heart of Silicon Valley, the leading edge of life and doing things in the world. And he's an amazing part of it. So thank you very much, Peter Brook, for this opportunity.
What I really enjoyed today, what I am inspired by the most is the ability to look at things in a fresh way. It doesn't matter how old you are. You look at each day as a new, fresh day. How amazing is that? I hope I always have that. That really inspired me to look at my day in a way that I hadn't quite. So thank you. Thank you, Peter Brook.
This was such a great honor to meet Peter Brook and to know that in his 91st year, he still has that charisma and he still has that wonderful feeling of vibrancy and of being open to and having his heart open to the possibilities of our world at this very moment. And that's such a precious gift, and he's given it to all of us today, and I'm so grateful for that. It's been a marvelous occasion. Thank you so much.
It was wonderful to have an opportunity to see Peter Brook at this point in his career. He's obviously a legend, and to be here in an intimate setting was just a real life-changing experience.
I've been an arts administrator for about 25 years, and I've first heard of Peter Brook when I worked at the National Center for Performing Arts in Bombay. And I think that for me it was really incredible being in this group and company today. And I think what stood out for me, and something that I didn't really think about, was how deeply spiritual he is as a person. And that's why he has had the vision to create something really beyond the regular capacity of a theatre artist or a director. And that was really special to sit opposite him and realize that and put it together.
This was just amazing. I didn't know what to expect, but when I came in, I did feel this amazing sense of community. And then once Peter Brook started speaking, it was like
heart-touching for me, because one of the important things in today's life was to be present. And to hear somebody great like that to say, no matter what I have done, I have had so many textures, so many experience, but what really matters is right now. Was the messages got out of it? And this was just one of the best afternoon, which I really enjoyed. Of course, the food and the wine and everything was good, but the conversation was the best.
The thing I would like to share most is the way I connected with Mr. Brook and his comment about each day and getting up and thanking God for being alive and appreciating what you have in front of you and just for being here. And we don't do that enough. And then to be able to, in my words, to ask what's my purpose today. And what I wanted to explore that I didn't get to yet is the difference between the sound bites of today on Facebook or any of the social media where it's a 10 to 15 second interaction, and having recently watched someone close to me act in a play, and for me over weeks discovered that deep personal difference between reflection and thought and presence over a period of hours and not sound bites. And today was a wonderful example of being able to hear discussion over hours and not I like or I click. So it was a good time. Thank you.
It was really inspiring. Thank you.
It was wonderful to hear Peter and to remember having seen his Mahabharata so many years ago, and to think at this much later date that he's coming back, of course, with a different take to the same story, talks about the deep and lasting resonance that dwells within those narratives from India that need to be communicated again and again according to the time, as he was pointing out at the end of his talk, that it will be different parts or pieces that you need to talk about to speak to your contemporary moment. And that's what a great artist does. Thank you.